When I am idle, I am what? Comes to mind.
I'm on edge. I don't do well when I don't.
On edge.
I do. When I'm not busy.
There you go. Shelley says, when I'm idle, I'm on edge. What else? What about the rest of you? Man, it really does have y'all guys today. Mark, when you're idle, what are you?
I was thinking two things, because sometimes I'm peaceful,
Okay.
but then I also feel like I'm not getting better. So if I'm idle, I'm not progressing.
Oh,
So if I'm thinking about, I don't know, exercise.
okay.
If I exercise, we go backwards instead of forwards.
Yeah. So there's an element of peace to it, but then there's also an element of restlessness because I need to be making progress in this or that.
Sounds better than what I said.
Well, just saying what you said and using different words to accomplish it. So that's one of the communication skills that you learn over time is repeat what somebody said, but repeat it using different words and make sure you understand what they said. So I like to practice that sometimes. So, Miss Tanya, when you're idle, I am.
Ooh, thank goodness I don't have anything to do.
You like it. You like it. She's content.
Recharging.
Okay.
I don't ever
Okay.
idle, so
You're never that you wouldn't know what it felt like to be idle.
I don't feel like it.
Maybe you avoid it because you're not recharged. Maybe it's like got this internal. And that's the interesting thing about idleness is some people feel recharged by it and some people feel exhausted by it.
See, I'm with Shay. If I get exhausted, like I'm just like.
Is that a
trying
bird
to
hit our
something I
window?
never do it. Like
I'm always
there's
going.
something I'm missing. Why is everything?
Yeah. I can be idle for a day and I love it. If I'm idle,
Snoring when I'm idle.
yeah. But if I'm idle for 2 days in a row, I'm anxious. First day, it's great. Second day, I can't do this anymore. All right. So I'm just sending something to our group me right now. And there is a 10-question quiz. I want you to do that 10-question quiz. It does not ask for an email. It doesn't ask for anything.
Where's my phone?
You left your phone? Do you want to borrow mine? You want to borrow mine?
I mean, mine's right outside.
No, you can borrow mine.
Yeah, we can do it.
There you go. 10 questions. It's an introvert-extrovert quiz. You may already know the answer, but I want you to take it anyways, learn something about yourself. Because your answer that you gave is a reflection to your tendency towards one of those two categories. Sam, what percent introvert were you?
63,
Huh.
which I think is a little low.
Yeah, I would have pinned you somewhere 70 or 80. But you have a slightly dominant personality that could gear you towards.
What does that mean?
So there's another personal assessment that you can be a D, which is a dominant personality, or you can be, there's an S or a C or an I. The I's are the happy-go-lucky people that are just like, everything's exciting. The S's are, isn't that me? They're somewhat emotional feelings. And then the C's are your detail-oriented people that are just want things to stay as is. But you have a little bit of a dominant personality that flares up every now and then that could lean you away from the introvert category. Not in a negative way. It's just like you step up when something needs to be said or done. Yeah. Not dominant as in abusive. Just like,
I was going to say, when have I ever abused you?
no. But if there's a lack of like somebody stepping up and saying what needs to be said or doing, you have that ability. You're not the first person to do it, but if nobody else does it, you will. Similar to me. Which
I feel
can,
like things are more effective generally when they don't come from me. I'm
I may echo that.
I'm like a backstop.
Mark, what are you? What's your percentage?
Balance. So
You're somewhere in the middle?
52 extrovert, 48% introvert.
Okay, you're right there.
That's changed a little bit. Though.
You're
More introvert.
you're pretty close to where I'm at. I'm like 55 introvert, 45 extrovert. There was another quiz out there that gave another middle ground that would explain people like us. But this one kept 2 categories. So, Tanya, where'd you fall?
I have 75% introvert.
Oh, yeah.
25% extrovert.
There you go. Leslie?
78 introvert.
Wow. Tyler?
93% introvert. That's like, of 10 questions, I feel like 4 of them, or 5 of them, I didn't feel really great about any of the answers.
But you just had
Like,
to
none of
pick.
these are.
Yeah. Derek?
75% introverted.
Oh, yeah.
I was 72 extrovert, just so for all these introverts.
Yeah.
I was on the higher
Shay, Fred, where'd y'all land?
57-43, and I have a hard time with that.
Are you an extrovert, 57?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I'm way more extroverted.
Okay. But you're also a thinker, so extroverts are doers, introverts are thinkers. So there's,
It's a balance.
yeah. Fred, where'd you land?
You're balanced?
No, nobody intend, not that way, no. Where'd you land?
I'm an extrovert.
Big time? What percentage did it tell you?
Well, since I'm still working on that, I gotta be at least 2/3 an extrovert.
Yeah. So how we answered the first question about when I am idle, I am, that's a reflection of your introvert, extrovert reality. Where did you take it, Whitney, Mark, Mike?
Still working on it, I was late getting started.
What did it tell you, Mike?
What my percentages were?
Yeah.
I was 65% introvert and 35% extrovert.
Okay.
I thought that
A
was
lot of
pretty accurate.
introverts.
Okay. And obviously, the more questions they add, the more accurate it becomes. I didn't want you guys to sit here for an hour, though. So, for many of us, the category becomes an explanation for why we do or do not do this or that. Right? It's like because you internally probably knew where you're going to fall before you took that. And so, therefore, when you have an opportunity or something in front of you, you're like, well, I don't do that because I'm an introvert, or, it's like I'm just not going to go there because that's not natural for me. And it becomes the explanation for why you do or do not do what you do or do not do. But what if settings outside our comfort zone are not the problem? What if the problem is not like doing things that are uncomfortable or things that are outside of our norm? What if that's not what creates the chaos? Right? Because we have chaos we defined last week as, I don't remember what we defined it last week, unpredictable, unrhythmic. It's out there. You can't control it. It's uncontrollable. And what you think in your brain as there's an opportunity in front of you, well, I'm an introvert, so I don't want to go do that. You may not think with those vocabulary words, but you think with that thought process. Because you think that if I put myself and my personality and the things that I'm natural and I step into a place that's outside of that, then it'll become chaotic and stressful and I won't like it and I won't handle it. Right? That's what we do. It's like, if I, a 93% introvert, step into a setting that requires me to operate and function as an extrovert, then internally it's going to create chaos for me. What if that's a lie? What if that's not fully true? What if submitting to your tendencies is the problem? What if it's not the external realities that create the chaos? What if it's you submitting to your label and saying, this is where I'm going to function? What if that is the problem? John 14:27, Jesus says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Peace I leave with you. I'm going to give you a recap. Some of you weren't here with us last week, so I'm going to give you a very brief recap for how we know that the Scriptures define peace. When peace goes back to the Old Testament was written in the Hebrew language, and there were four. Ancient Hebrew has this pictograph element to it, so each letter represents things in the Hebrew language. And beyond just saying peace, we can grab a fuller picture of what peace is by understanding what the original language was. And the first one represented teeth, which they understood had the ability to destroy. Think of a lion destroying his prey. The second letter in the Hebrew word for peace or shalom was a shepherd's staff, and that was an authority. When they saw the shepherd, they knew one who acted or spoke in authority. The fourth one was a nail or a hook, which is, as you could think, connected. You nail something together, it's the connection point. And the fourth letter in the word that makes up shalom was waters. When they saw that letter, they knew it represented waters, and in ancient Hebrew, they represent the waters as chaos. As chaos. So when the ancients would look at the word that in the Hebrew was shalom, which we know as peace, it's the ability to destroy the authority connected with all chaos. This is peace. And when Jesus says, peace I give to you, he says, I'm giving you the ability to destroy the authority that is connected with chaos. He said, my peace I give to you. So not only am I giving that to you, he says, I own it to begin with. This type of peace is possessed, by Jesus, and not only possessed, but is practiced by Jesus in his lifetime. So first of all, it is only obtained through Jesus because he alone possesses it. He alone has the ability to destroy authority connected to chaos, which we defined last week scripturally as Satan himself. He is the author of confusion. And Jesus says, I possess within me because it came from my Father. You look at the Great Commission in Matthew 28, it says, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me, Jesus says. And in that authority, he has the ability to destroy the authority connected to chaos. He owns and operates in that type of peace. And we said that Jesus not only possessed it, but he practiced it through things that we can observe and see in his life. And he also said he's giving this to us so that we too may possess and practice this type of peace. So through faith in Jesus, he says this too belongs to you. In my former life, this is me speaking. In my former life, I might have found myself in loud, smoky places where people danced. We know what those are called. Did you ever find yourself in those, Mike?
Long time ago.
So you can connect. Just don't create mental images. They're a bad thing, though, whatever. But in that loud, smoky, but you go to the club and it's whatever clubs are. But the interesting thing was I very rarely danced in those settings. Like it just wasn't going to happen for me. I had enough self-control to know that I can't control myself, and it's just not a pretty sight for me to dance. But I had a friend on the other hand. I had that friend who didn't hold back. And when he got wound up at the club, he just let it go. Right? Anybody have that friend? Mike's like, yeah, I had that friend. But I propose a thought to you this morning. Just because music is playing and your body is moving doesn't mean you're dancing. Just because music is playing and just because your body is moving doesn't immediately mean it's dancing. It can be a whole lot of things. Dance is, the actual definition for dance, according to some things, is rhythmic movements to the beat of the music. So dancing requires rhythm. Just because you're moving doesn't make it dancing, because dancing has a connection between the rhythm of your body and the rhythm of the music. And that was the struggle that my friend had. He was trying hard, but it just never matched. And what does it look like to have somebody who is trying really hard, giving all their effort to move their body, yet you look at them and you hear the music and you're like, I don't know if they hear the same music that I hear. Because the movement of their body does not have any connection with the rhythm of the music. Right? You know what that looks like. What does that look like? It's painful. It's awkward. You feel bad for them because others can see them. Right? How might we describe the unrhythmic and unpredictable steps of my friend? What's a word that we might want to use? It's already in our vocabulary.
Well, the answer is chaos.
The answer is chaos. I think that's a good description for what my friend used to do. Now, thank goodness he met Jesus, stopped going to bars, and stopped doing that. Thank goodness he no longer moves that way. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't dance, but you shouldn't dance like that. People that know Jesus shouldn't dance like that.
You're saying Jesus gave you rhythm?
He gave him the ability to destroy that chaos, right? And destroying it for him just meant stopping. But the rhythmic and sequential steps of a skilled performer, like when you see somebody that knows how to control their body to the tempo of the music, it's the opposite of chaos. You're like, man, it's actually peaceful to watch people that do that skillfully. It's like, wow, that's incredible. Now, both are attempting to accomplish the same thing. The only difference is rhythm. So the difference between chaos and peace is rhythm. That's the difference. The difference between chaos and peace is rhythm. Jesus practices the peace that he possesses through repeated, observable patterns, and we can learn from his examples. Jesus practiced the peace that he possessed in a rhythmic pattern throughout his life. Repeated steps, the proper tempo, one after another, gave him the power to practice the peace that he possessed. Okay? What did we talk about last week? We had a rhythm that he practiced last week. It was the rhythm of work and rest. Good job. Wake up. Okay? So this week we're going to look at the second rhythm, and we're going to go back to the same exact verse in Luke 5:16. Make this your memory verse, because we got 3 rhythms coming out of one verse. So we're going to visit this verse again each week. Luke 5:16, it says of Jesus that he often withdrew to deserted places and he prayed. He often withdrew to deserted places and he prayed. The rhythm of this week that we're going to look at is the rhythm of community and solitude. A repeatable pattern of rhythm, community and solitude, community and solitude. Let's look at in Luke 5 verse 1, it says that the crowd was pressing in on Jesus to hear God's word. Like when Jesus spoke, people flocked to him and the crowds would press in. Like if he's walking down Main Street, it looks like Spook City, but they're not here to get candy. The crowd is pressing in on Jesus, waiting for him to say the next thing that he's going to say. And it looks like street festivals everywhere he goes. Like this community of people is just constantly with him, pressing in on him. And then in Luke 5, verse 16, it says, the news about him spread even more, and large crowds would come together to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. Yet he often withdrew to deserted places and prayed. I find it interesting because when you and I think about ourselves and the categories that we identify ourselves by, those are just two of them. That when Jesus is surrounded by such a crowd of people constantly, day in and day out, he never seems to be overwhelmed by the chaos. Just never does. What do you and I do when we're overwhelmed by the chaos? What do we do? What's our physical, emotional reactions?
I leave.
Shut down and get out. Just leave. Where'd Sam go? I don't know. I guess he couldn't take it anymore. Just shut down, left. What do?
You get angry, try to take control.
Yeah. Like that's the way I feel in my house, Mike. It's like, no, I mean, like,
Angry.
I do. It's like when I got 4 kids and a wife and my house gets chaotic, like that's my emotional response. I don't typically shut down. I usually just get angry. I'm going to use that word. It's like because I want to just get angry and control the chaos. That's how I can control. That's my authority over the chaos. It's like if I just get ticked off enough, I can shut it down. That's my response to chaos. Right? But Jesus, you don't see that with him. You just don't. It's not like Jesus is ever like, just quit touching me. Right? I mean, I'm like, we're sitting there watching a movie last night, and this little dude is a wallower. Like, he just like on the couch. And I'm like, dude, I love you, but stop moving. Stop. And I just never saw Jesus do that in the gospel narrative. But then he retreats and he goes away to a place by himself. And he's idle. He's idle. He slips away from the community into a place of solitude. And you know what else I don't see? I don't see him restless in his idleness. Now I see that in his disciples that are like, Jesus, everybody's looking for you. Where'd you go? We got a lot of things to do. He's like, all right, let's go to the next town. It's interesting to me that Jesus, in his perfection as the Son of God, either is he's like right here. He flawlessly functions in both settings just right. Like in the crowd where people are shoving and pushing, just want to touch him, just want to hear him, just want to be with him. He doesn't have emotional responses, but when he's idle, he's just as content as when he's in the community. He has this rhythm of community and solitude that we can observe. He's not overwhelmed or anxious from the chaos in the crowd. And in fact, he pursues and engages and pushes the boundaries and is typically the center of community. You know those people? Like that's the whole reason that I actually was unwilling to even allow God to say that you're going to start a church. It's because I perceived the guys that started churches were the ones out in the community, just like the center of attention and the excitable people. Like as they went through the streets, they just like made a scene everywhere they went. They were excitable people. And I'm like, that's not me. But Jesus, when he pressed into the community, he pushed boundaries and he went in and he created the crowd. He created the conversation and he was always going and moving and pushing yet he was regularly stepping away to places of solitude. And it's interesting, if you know the people that are like the people that push in, create the movements and do those things, a lot of them struggle with solitude. Like if you shut their life down, they don't know who they are. Because most of us, when we're an extrovert, we identify by the crowd. It's like if I have a crowd, then I'm doing good. And then if you pull them out of the crowd, they don't always function well. They don't know what to do next. But Jesus wasn't that way. This is one of the rhythms that he used to practice the peace that he possesses. The rhythm of community and solitude. So I want to ask you real quick, what are the pros to being an introvert and pros to extrovert tendencies? Like, I'm not even asking you for the cons, but what are the pros to introvert tendencies and what are the pros to extrovert tendencies? What do you think?
As an introvert, you don't create conflict.
Okay. It's like you're not rocking the boat because you're staying to yourself.
Extrovert, making lots of connections, close milestones, good fed.
Okay. Is it networking? Extroverts do well at networking. They're always building connections. Those connections have value. Okay. What are all pros? Introvert.
Introverts are quick to listen in conversation.
Okay. Introverts might be better or good at listening and considering, thinking. Right? Because they're typically reflective. Introverts can be really good at reflecting on what they're perceiving, looking, hearing, and they consider it deeply. Okay? What else?
Extroverts more likely to engage.
Okay?
So I'm trying to, like, it's, I don't know how to word this, but they can figure out somebody has an issue and do something about it, whereas extrovert will just be like, oh, they're right.
Okay. So there's a lot of value that comes with being able to engage. Part of that value may be you learn about the people that are around you to the point that you can actually take action to it. Right? Where the introvert, if we were listening to Con, they may, and we've talked about this a lot, like in our DNA group, like who's around us, even on Sunday mornings. And we're like, sometimes when there's an introvert, you're like, oh, I don't know. But the extrovert's the one that meets them at the door. It's like, hey, who are you? You know, it's just the difference there. Introverts do well on home turf. Extroverts do well anywhere, especially in the world, like new places. Like extroverts, when you're idle on your home turf, you almost don't do so well. But the introvert thrives at home, thrives on his home turf. Anything else? They observe well. Extroverts push limits really good. To where the introvert doesn't like to push limits sometimes. Okay. And I had something, Shay, that went with your networking. Extroverts are aware of the value of other people. Like maybe to the point of wanting to use them, but it's like, I mean, that could go south really quick, but they're aware of the people value around them.
So think about, one of the things I was thinking about introvert is they're more independent, but
Okay.
they can also be a bad thing, because they're independent as much as that they go, well, I gotta just be able to do everything on my own. I can't trust on anybody else, whereas the
Yeah.
extrovert knows, they can get help from other people and really
Mhm.
accomplish things.
Which Derek just said, what I want us to realize before we move on is every pro contains potential for chaos and must be balanced by a regular rhythm of the other. Right? So every pro has potential when it leans all to this side to be the source of your chaos. Like, even though your independence is a good thing because you can function, you just said it, if I'm always independent and I never lean into others, then that can be the source of my chaos. Like, if I'm solely dependent on myself, I won't let anybody help, I won't do this, I won't do that, and it's always about me, then that becomes the thing that stirs that uncontrollable imbalance. It becomes the source of your chaos. So you have to balance it with a regular rhythm of the other hand in order to practice deep levels of peace. And that's why I say, to begin this conversation, the problem is not external situations that you may or may not find yourself in. The problem becomes when I solely submit to one side or the other, either to community or to solitude. Like, if I label myself solitude, y'all know what I meant. It's my shorthand, right? I think that's where the problem lands. It's like if I fully submit to being an extrovert, going, engaging, pushing, never home, always going, always moving, always engaging, always surrounded by people, feeding and thriving and doing well in crowds, but I never have a balanced level of solitude, then that will snowball and become my source of chaos. So how do I balance that and find peace? I practice the art of solitude if I'm an extrovert. And it keeps me functioning in a rhythm that allows me to destroy the authority connected to chaos. But when I submit and I say, this is me all the time, it's going to create chaos. Even if it's what has the potential for good, it's also the potential for chaos. Right? So we have a balanced, we saw that with Jesus, a balanced rhythm of community and solitude. So how does this translate into your life? Right, so think about you. Do you avoid community assuming that it will drain you? Or do you avoid solitude? Struggle when you're idle? It's like, where does all this land in your life? Are you currently imbalanced? How do you perceive the other side? How do you wrestle against that?
I know for a fact that, like, when I get up early and I have that, quote, solitude, just being in the Word of God and prayer before everybody wakes up, the chaos of the day is incredibly peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's, like, the mornings with the kids, but then when I don't have that, the day feels so much more hectic for me,
Yeah.
just mentally.
Even as an extrovert.
Yes, but like that, that time before everybody wakes up, if I can just be in the Word of God and just being with my Savior, I could instantly tell a difference in the rest of my day.
Yeah.
As opposed to when I'm not, I feel like I just hit the ground running and rushing and feeling like we just gotta go, we just gotta go.
I think that Shelley's very right. I think there's a hidden principle. In fact, Tony and I talked about it here recently. I think one of the things missing because of my sinful nature is that I really have to, as a result of my life and all that I've been through, it's caused me to, I have this, I can't say it's constant, but very, very frequent, awareness that I need God. There's this, and I think there's a lot to what Jesus said in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. There's a principle of spending time alone with God on a daily basis, and Scripture seems to point toward giving Him the first part of our day. As we give the first part of our tithe, as we saw Jesus getting up early in the morning, there's something about that is a real jewel in the crown of what you're talking about today. I can't explain it, and Shelley explained it pretty well. I don't know what it is, but there's something about spending time with God every day.
Yeah.
And just getting on my knees and saying, God, I need your help today. I need your, help me to stay sober today. Help me to live my life that besides selfishly and for myself. One of the 12-step prayers is one of the most beautiful prayers. It says, is a giving up of self and a yielding of self to God, and allowing God to infuse me with His Spirit where I'm not so selfish and self-centered. I can't really, that's a conviction of mine, something I think we could all do a little bit more of, is this subtle urgency of how bad we really need God every day.
Yeah.
If we had more of that, we'd be in a lot better place.
I'm just curious if I understand both of y'all. So basically, having that moment of peaceful solitude in the morning to be able to deal with the chaos of the day, instead of waking up, let's say like you're a little late for work and you wake up or whatever, and that starts the day chaotic, so you never can catch up to the peace. Is that right?
Yeah. And
That time of asking God come take me over
yeah.
and fill me up with yourself. And, so I'm not living on fumes, so to speak.
Yeah.
Something about it, I don't know.
Speak to this, because we have a room full of introverts. And I think here's the interesting thing is our conversation in this realm typically goes where it just went. We need to have the quiet time. We need to have time alone with our Heavenly Father. We need to be in that solitude, because when we miss the solitude, it becomes chaotic. But we have a room full of introverts. And you're always going to lean towards that. And then when I invite you to host and be hospitable, and when I invite you to come to a meal and a party and be around people that you can meet and begin to get plugged into their life, then you're like, I need to go spend some time with Jesus right now. Right? I need some solitude. I'm like, no, you also need some community, because Jesus practiced a regular rhythm. He pressed into people and then he pressed into his Father. He pressed into people and he pressed into his Father. And I think when you have a room full of introverts, we're going to amen that one. And then I'm like, hey, why don't we go spend some time with this group of people? So, oh, man. But I don't know them. Oh, I don't know, man. Let me see what I got on my schedule. Let me see. Right?
I won't push back against that. The more regular I am in that solitude time, the more I'm an extrovert and other-centered.
It's rhythm. It's rhythm.
I am.
It's rhythm. One feeds off the other.
If I go a few days without quiet time, I'm not a person that thinks about others very much.
Yeah.
I'm pretty selfish and self-centered.
As an introvert, I think a lot of people wouldn't, on the outside, if you didn't know me very well, you wouldn't say that about me. You'd probably say I'm an extrovert. But I can be an extrovert, but I have to work really hard at it, and it's exhausting
Yeah.
to me. I mean, like having everybody over last Sunday was great, and I enjoyed it, but when everybody left and we shut the doors, like, where's my blanket and my pillow?
Yeah.
I lay on my couch.
I want to go hide. Yeah. And that's the rhythm. Because if you lean into one side, like if you submit to your introvert and you never host, you're never a part of community, then what you're going to find is submitting to the solitude will create a chaos. And even though you're a deep thinker, you'll become an overthinker. Even though you're a reflective, emotional introvert, you will become emotionally unstable, unable to function with others. Right? If you submit to one side or the other, Even though I understand, because one friend of mine described that if you're an extrovert, you get energized by being with people. If you're an introvert, you get re-energized by being alone. But what are you doing with that energy? Are you going to reinvest it back in the opposite side so that you can create a rhythm? Or are you going to sink deeply into one or the other? And if you sink deeply, it's going to be the source of your chaos. The value of being able to listen and to consider and to think deeply could be the source of your emotional instability. Because you go into places, you'll be over-observant. You'll overthink things. You'll think it's all about you. You'll think and it'll be the source of your anxiety. So yeah, they both feed off each other. And there's a rhythm to it. There's a rhythm to it. Right? So as a room full of introverts, we're going to lean in towards our solitude time. But I'm going to push back on you and say, yes, but there's a rhythm of community and solitude. And even though it may be an intentional decision of yours to press into the opposite, unnatural side, it's necessary in order for you to function at a deeper level of peace that Jesus offers you. It's necessary. Because you're not going to fully experience and enjoy the shalom that He is offering you without the other side.